Welcome to this episode of Q&A with Liturgy Man. I'm Taylor Burton-Edwards, Liturgy Man with Discipleship Ministries of the United Methodist Church. I'm your apportionment dollars at work to help you strengthen worship and the understanding of worship where you are. Today's question is one I get frequently at this time of the year, and that is, when should you hang the greens? Should you do it at the beginning or even just before the beginning of Advent? Or should you do it closer to Christmas, at the end of Advent, or even in Christmas season itself? Well, the answer to that question is, it depends. It depends on what you and your congregation are intending to convey by the use of additional greens in the worship space whenever it is that you begin the process of displaying them. Now, let me say that the original purpose around the hanging of the greens had to do with Christmas season and not with Advent. Typically during Advent, the worship space would have been pretty stark. There wouldn't have been a lot of other things in it. It would have been actually kind of similar to what it would be like during the season of Lent. This is why there is this continuity of color very often between Lent purple and Advent purple, as that sign of a season of penitence and anticipation of judgment and warning. Also, at the same time, the Advent anticipation of the culmination of all things in Christ. So the practice of the hanging of the greens began in the Middle Ages in Europe and in England and some other places where there were evergreens to be hung. As a Christmas practice, a practice of adding something to this, what had been this sort of sparse worship space, as a means of celebrating the ideas of new life coming into the world, of incarnation, of hope, of life in the midst of the sort of darkness and death of winter time, all those things that get associated with evergreens right before Christmas. And as a means of sort of getting ready for and celebrating and amplifying what the meanings of Christmas season as a whole would be. Keep in mind, too, that during that period, there were no such things as artificial greens. So if you were, in fact, trying to bring the greens in during an earlier time of Advent, they would turn from greens to browns and from life-filled to potential significant fire hazard in a couple weeks' time, and you would need to remove them and replace them several times before you even got to the Christmas season. So, if your intention is to do what the hanging of the greens was originally designed to do, and that is to celebrate Christmas season, you would probably do that celebration of the hanging of the greens, perhaps in an afternoon service or afternoon project where you get folks together after the fourth Sunday of Advent, before your Christmas Eve service. If, however, your intention is to use it as an Advent celebration, it's perfectly appropriate to do so, then you might consider doing that on the first Sunday of Advent. In this case, you do want to focus on the understanding of these greens as enhancing the focus, the Advent focus of the promise and the hope that comes with the culmination of all things in Christ, which is what the Advent season, in Christ's second coming, which is what the Advent season was originally and still in its readings and in its observation is intended to help us to celebrate. A couple of great resources for doing it as an Advent resource are in the Book of Worship, a service for the hanging of the greens, and there's also one on the Discipleship Ministries website. Just go to discipleshipministries.org and go into the search box and click Hanging of the Greens. You'll see a perfectly good service there, and everything about it focuses on the Advent themes of the second coming of Christ and the culmination of all things in Christ. So you can do it either way. It's important, however you do it, that you do it in a way that is clear and that you articulate why you are doing it, and that you not get these symbols confused. Symbols such as greens do not speak only for themselves. They speak in a context in which they appear. and the context in which greenery starts showing up in American culture more generally has a lot more to do with Christmas than it does with Advent. And so that symbol, if you're using it during Advent, could have the unintended consequence of actually importing a lot of sort of Christmas time themes from the secular culture that you don't intend for Advent. So you want to be, again, careful about why you use the things that you use when you use them. Do it either time. Just be clear why. Hope this has been helpful. Remember, you can always contact me, worship@liturgyfolks.com, through our UMC Worship Facebook group, or drop a line on this page. And perhaps your question or comment will become the basis for a future episode of Q&A with Liturgy Man. May the peace of Christ be always with you.